On this episode of China Uncensored, how the Chinese Communist Party is buying influence in the Australian government. Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Chinese money has been pouring into Australia over the past few years. Some of it is connected to the Chinese Communist Party, and it's being used to buy influence in the Australian government and its policies. I sat down with Craig Kelly, member of the Australian House of Representatives, to talk about why it's such a big deal. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Kelly. So the Chinese Communist Party is buying influence with Australian members of Parliament. What's the going rate these days?
Very funny question. We saw our ex-Labor Senator, Senator Dastyari, accept a couple of $1,000s that we know about from an influential Chinese businessman and actually being forced to resign from the Senate. So the price seems to be coming down quite a bit at the moment.
It seems like to sell out your country $1,000, a couple thousand, isn't that much?
Well, look, what the real issue with Mr. Dastyari was that the Australian government, both the coalition, which is in government now, and the Labor Party, who are the opposition, had a bipartisan position on China's influence in the South China Sea. Now, what Senator Dastyari actually did, he went to our parliamentary offices in Sydney, a special parliamentary office for federal parliamentarians where special interviews are held with heads of state, commandeered the main interview room and took two lecterns with the Australian crest in front of them to give it all the official imprimatur, stood on one lectern himself, had his Chinese business friend on the other lectern, and basically went and said views that were completely contrary to both his own party, the Australian government, the Parliament of Australia's position on the South China Sea.
So it made it look very official.
It made it look very official that he was actually what we're taking, if you want to call it, the Chinese Communist Party's position, contrary to all other international positions of Australia and almost every other nation in the world on the South China Sea. And then we find out later that he'd been accepting money from this Chinese businessman to help pay some of his legal bills.
And it isn't just Sam Dastyari. How else have you seen Chinese Communist Party infiltration affect Australian politics?
Well, look, there's a lot. I'll give you one example. I was at a function last year, and it was a lot of Chinese businessmen, and I just went along as my position of Member of Parliament. We had an invitation, and at the time, Shen Yuan, the ballet and the play, and the ballet opera play, I'm not sure.
Chinese classical dance.
Chinese classical dance, which has been shown in Sydney, was on. Now, I've been in the Senate before. They were invited. Look, I liked it. I must admit, I'm a more sort of football and sporting type of guy that would rather go to a sporting event than something at the ballet. So, although I enjoyed it, I prefer to go to the football if I had my choice.
Can't drink a beer watching.
That's right. Yes. So, anyhow, this very high-ranking Chinese government official said to me at the time, you shouldn't go to these things. This is not China's official custom, and therefore you shouldn't go. Now, I didn't really have any great intention of going, but I said to him, look, we also have a custom in Australia, and when people tell us not to do something, it makes us want to go and do it. I said, I was actually going to watch the football that day, but now I just might go and see it.
That actually sounds a lot like how Americans respond to that sort of thing. And actually, how has this Chinese Communist Party infiltration affected U.S.-Australia relationships?
Well, look, we have very close relationship with the USA. So Australia's relationship, our trade relationship, our belief in freedom of speech, democracy, all those freedoms that we hold so dearly are equally held by Australians and Americans.
Do you think the Communist Party is trying to drive a wedge between our two countries?
Oh, look, I don't think they'll be able to achieve that.
Well, I did just want to say the Communist Party is trying to buy influence in Australia, but partnering with the U.S., there can be a lot of benefits to that as well.
Absolutely, that looks very good. I'll put that on my desk in Parliament House proudly, very proudly. I will.
Well, it's yours. No, it's yours.
Thank you.
And so, what can Australian politicians and officials do in the face of Communist Party infiltration?
One of the issues also is that we have very deep economic ties with China, and that's the commercial reality of the world. China is our biggest export market, so of course we need good relations with China. That's just the bottom line economics. But we have to tread those lines carefully. And I think one thing that, for my business dealing with Chinese before I came into politics is they respect if you are firm. If you show signs of weakness, if you show signs of appeasement, they just take advantage of that.
Do you support the foreign interference laws?
Yeah, absolutely. They're important laws. We need to make sure that the outcome of the elections in Australia are determined by the Australian people. That's what we need to do. And at the moment, there's evidence of influence of foreign money coming in to influence those elections, and that's what we need to stamp out.
And do you think there's any risk that the laws are written in a vague way that could negatively affect Chinese Australians?
I don't think so, not at all. I think that, look, we have many people from China that have settled in Australia. And one of the reasons that they've settled is because of our democratic systems and democratic beliefs, and the right that they get to go to they get to go to that polling booth and vote for whoever they want to. If they don't like the way the government is going, they can stand up and they can protest as loudly as that they like, without knowing there's any going to be sort of comeback or sanctions against them personally.
Mm-hmm. And I know you've actually spoken up on behalf of Chinese Australian groups that are often victimized by the Chinese Communist Party. Have you faced any consequences for that?
Well, I haven't personally, no. But it is, this is an area that all of us in politics know we have to tread carefully, because we don't want to be doing things that actually upset our trading relationship with China, because that's very important as well.
Mm-hmm. So how do you balance keeping a good relationship with China in the face of this?
Well, I think the most important thing that I've seen that Chinese respect is strength. And if you show that you have a solid position on a certain issue and you are not going to bend or weaken on that, I think that's what they respect.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today. And let's have a little cheers.
We'll celebrate,
to,
absolutely.
The future.
Thank you.
Thank
Cheers.
you very
All the
much.
best.
Just want to give a big thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon. Because of you, we're able to come here to Australia to cover these great topics. So, if you're interested in supporting us on Patreon, you can click the button below.